The movie opens in the future when a new illness called the maize virus spreads across Europe, turning infected people into deadly zombies. Most of Europe manages to control the outbreak, but Ireland suffers massive devastation. Eventually, scientists discover a cure, but it only works on 75% of the infected, leaving the remaining 25% resistant to it. Those who recover are called the cured and return to normal life, while the resistant are kept in captivity. However, the public believes the resistant should be executed to prevent another outbreak. The cured still remember their time as zombies and the terrible things they did, leaving many of them with severe PTSD. Senan struggles with bloody visions of his past and rushes to the mirror for reassurance. He notices veins in the corner of his eye, a mark of the cured, which helps him calm down. His cured friend, Connor, checks on him, and they agree that life may never truly return to normal. Later, Senan meets his rehabilitation officer, Sergeant Cantor. Senan explains that he was infected for 4 years and suffers from nightmares, but Cantor sees this as a good thing, believing the cured should always remember the harm they caused. Cantor then surprises Senan by announcing that his sister-in-law, Abigail, will take him in. This is unusual since most people view the cured as dangerous and prefer them in accommodation centers. When Senan and Connor ride the bus, they observe how much the city has changed, with soldiers and camps scattered everywhere. Riots erupt in the streets as the government debates how to handle the resistant. Outside the accommodation center, dozens of protesters throw objects and shout, calling the cured murderers and not human. When Senan and Connor reach their destination, they hug goodbye, and Connor warns Senan not to reveal his secret to his sister-in-law. Abigail, a reporter, lives with her son Killian. Her husband, Luke, tragically died during the outbreak. When Senan arrives at her home, Abigail greets him with a hug. Senan tells her she doesn't need to help him, but Abigail insists it's what Luke would have wanted, especially since this is his house. She asks about Luke's final moments, but Senan lies, saying they were separated during the evacuation. That night, Senan struggles to sleep, haunted by memories of the outbreak. He remembers being with Luke when evacuation sirens blared across the city. Luke frantically searched for his family, but couldn't find them. A zombie suddenly attacked Senan from behind. Luke fought it off with a tool, but it was too late. Senan was already infected. Senan begged his brother to run. Luke locked the door behind him as he fled, but Senan, consumed by infection, began breaking it down. The next day, Connor visits his father to ask for help finding a better job. He wants to return to being a lawyer instead of working as a cleaner. His father, disgusted by the request, shoves Connor against a car and calls him a monster, blaming him for what happened to his mother. Senan takes his old bike to the treatment center where he works. An officer checks his eyes to confirm he's cured before letting him in. Dr. Joan asks him to handle a resistant patient named Joe, who is restrained to a bed. Joe screams and growls at the sight of Joan, trying to break free. Senan holds Joe down, as she only reacts aggressively toward Joan, not him. This allows Joan to give her an injection. Joan explains that Joe recognized Senan as one of her own because, even after being cured, traces of the virus remain in his cells. Later, Senan stays with Joe, bathing her and showing her compassion. Meanwhile, Abigail picks up Killian from school, where other parents judge her for allowing a monster into her home. Later, Senan visits Connor at the accommodation center and reveals that the resistant don't attack the cured. This makes Connor believe the cured might be safer with the resistant than with prejudiced normal people. Cantor interrupts their chat and scolds Connor for skipping work. Connor argues that he isn't a cleaner, but Cantor reminds him that things have changed and they must follow the new rules. Cantor also warns Connor to stop contacting his family because they no longer want him in their lives. This enrages Connor, who snaps and attacks Cantor. Cantor quickly slams Connor onto a table and throws him to the floor. Senan tries to help, but 2 armed men hold him back. That night, Senan dreams of being a zombie and attacking a child. He wakes up to find hateful graffiti on the front door. Meanwhile, Joan is horrified to discover that the government plans to start slaying all the resistant, promising they'll be wiped out by the end of the week. At the same time, Connor approaches Abigail and introduces himself as Senon's friend. Abigail, friendly toward the cured, asks about his experience. Connor explains how hard it was to be trapped inside his own body and how impossible it was to resist the bloodthirst. At the treatment center, Senon continues helping Joan work on a cure by assisting Joe. During a break, he notices two soldiers entering the building where the resistant are kept. Hearing a woman growling, he follows the sound into a cell. There, he finds one soldier holding down a female resistant while the other urinates on her legs. Senon, furious, tackles the man, but the soldier easily overpowers him with his training and pushes him against the wall. Taking advantage of the distraction, the resistant escapes the soldier's hold and chases him through the corridors. Another soldier quickly pulls out his gun and shoots her. Senon watches in devastation as she dies, but the soldier coldly remarks that she was going to die anyway. Meanwhile, riots worsen on the streets, and Joan appears on the news. She defends the resistance rights and pleads for more time to find a better cure. The hostess disagrees, arguing that finishing the resistant is a merciful way to protect society. Connor, hearing this, warns that the government will target the cured next and insists they must act. Later, Connor takes Senon to the basement of the accommodation center, where rebels have formed the cured alliance to fight for their rights. They prepare Molotov bombs, and Connor assures Senon they will only target empty homes. That night, the rebels set fire to several houses belonging to soldiers. At the same time, Abigail gets a call from her boss about the incident and realizes Senon isn't in his room. The next morning, the news labels the Cured Alliance as a terrorist organization. Senon is shocked to learn that a man died during the bombing. Authorities begin arresting anyone protesting for cured rights. Meanwhile, Senon keeps having flashbacks of himself as a zombie. He remembers that Connor was the one who bit him, and Luke tried to reason with him. In response, Senon attacked and slayed Luke in the same house where Abigail now lives. One afternoon at the doctor's office, Senon finds a picture of Joan and Joe together. He realizes they were a couple and worked together to find the cure before Joe became infected. Later, when Senon returns home, Abigail asks if he has been attending Cured Alliance meetings since he leaves the house every night, but he denies it. She then shares how devastating it was to come home and find her husband's dead body on the floor. To comfort her, Senon takes Abigail and Killian to a beautiful spot outside the city. He tells them that he and Luke used to visit the place often as kids. That night, Connor visits Senon at home. Tensions rise when Abigail suggests euthanizing the resistant to prevent another outbreak. However, she supports cured rights and argues they shouldn't be blamed for what they did as zombies since they weren't in control. This makes Connor wonder if she would forgive her husband's killer. Upset, Abigail leaves the room. Senon then confronts Connor for lying about the empty houses and declares he is quitting the alliance. The next day, while Senon takes Killian to school, Cantor visits Abigail, pretending to check on the families of the cured. He starts with routine questions, but soon reveals his true intentions. Cantor claims the zombies aren't mindless. He believes they hunt in packs, communicate, and plan their attacks. Before leaving, he hands Abigail a confidential file and tells her to call him if she learns anything. When Abigail opens the file, she's shocked to find photos of Senon and Connor as zombies. Later, Abigail sneaks into the accommodation center through the back door to gather footage. She records 5 cured standing in a circle, synchronizing their breathing with their eyes closed. When one of them spots her, Abigail quickly moves to another floor where she finds Connor giving a speech to recruit more cured to his rebel cause. Suddenly, a woman grabs Abigail and pushes her against the wall, but Connor intervenes before things escalate. Abigail accuses him of orchestrating the bombings and demands he stay away from her family, repeating Cantor's claims about zombies hunting in packs. Connor grows suspicious since she shouldn't know this information. As Abigail leaves, she notices people following her, likely trying to retrieve her camera. Abigail runs into an empty room to hide and climbs out the window. A man grabs her and tries to pull her back inside, but she slams the window on his hand and escapes. In her office, Joan hears that the soldiers have slayed all the resistance members on level 1. She notices Joe sitting up on her stretcher and approaches her to communicate. When Joan tries to touch her, Joe jumps on her and knocks her down. The noise alerts the soldiers, who come in and tie a rope around Joe's neck like a leash. They declare they'll euthanize her like the others, ignoring Joan's tearful pleas for more time. That night, Joan secretly meets with Connor. Meanwhile, at home, Abigail notices new graffiti on the window. When she steps outside, she doesn't see anyone. Suddenly, a masked man breaks into the house and attacks Senan with a bat, calling him cured scum. The intruder adds more graffiti to the living room walls as Senan lies on the floor, hallucinating about Luke's death. The man hits Senan again, knocking him unconscious before fleeing. The next morning, the police briefly inspect the graffiti, but explain it's common in homes where the cured live and that they can't do much without more information. Senan visits Connor and admits he was right, deciding to rejoin the alliance to protect his family. Meanwhile, Abigail discovers the intruder stole the memory card from her camera containing footage of the rebels' meeting. Suspecting someone from the alliance, Abigail calls Cantor and informs him that Connor is planning something. At the accommodation center, Senan attends an alliance meeting and is shocked to see Joan there. The group discusses a plan to rescue Joe, but Senan insists they avoid killing any guards. Suddenly, they hear noises as soldiers raid the building, violently attacking anyone who resists. Connor and the rebels flee, but Senan stays behind and gets caught by the soldiers. Despite their questions, Senan remains silent. Later, Connor finds Abigail with Killian at the park and reveals that Senan killed Luke, showing her the scar Luke left on his neck during a fight to save his brother. At the same time, Cantor interrogates Senan and even offers to protect his family, but Senan refuses to speak. Without enough evidence, the soldiers release him. On his way out, a cured delivers a message from Connor about the next meeting. When Senan arrives home, Abigail demands the truth, and he finally confesses that he finished off Luke. Abigail is furious when she discovers he lied to her. She screams through her tears and kicks him out. That night, Senan meets Connor, who admits he told Abigail the truth. Connor explains that Senan needed to understand even seemingly kind people can turn against the cured. This revelation makes Senan realize Connor has been free of nightmares. As they talk, Cantor finds them, now armed with enough evidence to link them to the bombings. Senan cooperates and handcuffs himself, but Connor grabs a broken bottle and viciously stabs Cantor in the neck multiple times, slaying him. Connor then takes Cantor's gun and points it at Senan, accusing him of tipping Cantor off. Senan defends his actions, explaining he couldn't let Connor keep hurting people. Sirens approach, and Connor declares the plan is already in motion before fleeing. The next day, the cured infiltrate the treatment center dressed as doctors, using uniforms provided by Joan. They stab the guards and head to the control room, where Joan unlocks Joe's cell with her password. Suddenly, a rebel among the cured forces Joan to step back and unlocks all the other cells, ignoring her protests. Meanwhile, Senan enters the building, walking through a corridor filled with resistance. They don't attack him, sensing the virus still in his body. When the armed rebel tries to leave, Senan tackles him to the ground. More soldiers arrive and open fire to finish any resistance members trying to sneak out. A bomb left by the rebels earlier explodes, destroying the gate and allowing all the resistance to escape. Senan avoids being stepped on, but the rebel doesn't make it. After the resistance has left, Senan looks up and is shocked to see Joe still in her cell. He runs outside, where he finds zombies attacking soldiers and feeding on them. Back inside, Joan notices that Joe didn't leave and sits next to her. The women hold hands and share a kiss before a crazy resistance member jumps on Joan to bite her. At home, Abigail hears a growling noise, grabs an axe, and goes outside. When a zombie approaches, she immediately takes it down. More zombies arrive, but a truck full of soldiers begins evacuating the area. Abigail wants to pick up her son from school, but the soldiers force her to stay with them. Nearby, Senan runs down the street while soldiers shoot zombies around him. He sees Abigail being taken away in the truck, and she screams at him, asking him to rescue Killian. Zombies and soldiers continue to fight throughout the town. Connor tries to befriend one of the zombies, only to watch it get shot, so he doesn't help the soldier when another zombie attacks him. Evacuated citizens like Abigail are taken to a quarantine camp, but the cured aren't allowed in. Senan runs through the chaos and reaches the school, where kids follow a soldier while a zombie eats the teacher. He shouts Killian's name until he finds him hiding nearby. He picks the boy up and starts running, unaware that Connor is watching him. A few blocks later, Connor appears with a zombie that wants to take Killian. Senan tells the boy to run and tackles the zombie to the ground to buy some time. More zombies chase Killian while Connor hits Senan from behind with a pipe, stopping him from following. When Senan tries to get up and leave, Connor hits his legs and straddles him to beat him up. The soldiers nearby keep shooting at the zombies, and a stray bullet hits Connor, bringing him down. Senan has the chance to finish him off, but he hears Killian crying for help. He runs to save his nephew instead. The boy is hiding under a car, with zombies reaching for him. Senan beats them away with the pipe, then picks Killian up. On their way out, he notices Connor is gone. At the quarantine zone, Abigail tells a guard that the cured should be allowed in and spits on him. The guard punches her in the stomach, making the cured go crazy and push their way into the safe zone. While everyone is distracted, Abigail sneaks into a building and takes the stairs to escape. After walking for a while, she finds a dead soldier on the ground. A zombie attacks her, so Abigail grabs the soldier's gun and shoots it. But the soldier wakes up as a zombie too, and she has to murk him as well. Joe stares at Joan's body for a while before leaving the treatment center. It's dark outside when Abigail finally returns home. Senan arrives with Killian, who runs to hug his mother. Suddenly, a zombie jumps out and quickly bites Killian. Senan jumps on the zombie and beats it to death, screaming in frustration. Afterward, Abigail considers finishing her son before he transforms, but Senan takes Killian from her. He says he'll keep his nephew safe until they can get the cure, and then they leave, leaving Abigail grieving alone. Later, the news announces that order has been restored, but 8,000 zombies are now in captivity. The government is still slaying the resistant, claiming it's the only way to get rid of the virus for good. The streets are covered with posters of Connor, who has become the face of the rebels. Abigail worries about her son, but smiles when she hears on the news that a small group of infected people are on the run in the countryside. Senan and Killian are part of that group, doing their best to survive. And that's how the movie ends. What did you think of this movie? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and press the bell icon for more amazing videos. See you next time.